At Evan's victory banquet, I was publicly splashed with a glass of red wine by his cherished white moonlight. That glass of 1982 Lafite trickled down the hem of my pure white handmade gown, resembling an ugly scar. The instigator, Celine, covered her mouth, her eyes red and brimming with tears. "I'm sorry, Sister Selena, I didn't mean to, I was just too happy for Brother Evan." The surrounding guests whispered among themselves, their gazes piercing me like needles. In my hand, I still tightly clutched a document, the key to turning around Evan's company, which I had secured by mobilizing all the connections left by my father and staying up for 3 consecutive nights. Now, this document was also soaked in red wine, spreading a glaring red stain. I didn't look at the pitiful Celine, nor did I pay attention to the pointing and whispering around me. My gaze was fixed intently on Evan. This was the man I had loved for 10 years, accompanying him from having nothing to becoming a new tycoon in the business world. I gave up my career, my connections, my pride, caring for his daily life like a nanny, paving the way for his business. I thought that 10 years would warm even a stone. But he just frowned, took a napkin from the waiter's tray, and gently wiped Celine's fingers stained with wine due to her carelessness. His voice was as cold as ice. "Selena, Celine didn't mean it, don't make a scene here, what does that look like?" "Make a scene?" I looked at him and suddenly laughed. So all my efforts, in his eyes, were nothing but an unseemly fuss. My heart, at that moment, seemed completely extinguished by that glass of cold red wine. The 10 years of burning love left only a few embers about to die out. "Evan," I heard my own voice, eerily calm, "how long have we known each other?" He was stunned for a moment, seemingly not expecting this question, a flash of impatience in his eyes. "Why bring this up now?" 10 years and 3 months, I answered for him. "I cooked for you, managed the company's internal and external affairs, cleared all connections for you, blocked all overt and covert attacks for you. I thought, at least, I should be your comrade in arms." My gaze swept over his hand wiping Celine's, and I mockingly curled my lips. "But now I understand, I can't even compare to one of her wine-stained fingers." Evan's face finally changed, looking somewhat ugly. "Selena, you've had too much to drink." "I haven't had too much, I'm very sober." I let go, allowing the ruined document to fall to the ground, like our completely destroyed relationship. I walked step by step to him, ignoring the storm brewing in his eyes and Celine's smug look. Then, in front of everyone, I slowly removed the diamond ring from my left ring finger, the one he bought with the bonus from his first project. The ring was small, even a bit uncomfortable, but I had worn it for 7 years. "Evan," I placed the ring on the table in front of him, making a crisp ding sound, like something completely shattering. "This, return it to you." And, I stared into his eyes, word by word, clearly, "Let's divorce." After saying that, I no longer looked at his instantly stunned and furious face, turned around, and in the deathly silence of the entire hall, with my back straight, walked step by step out of this opulent yet suffocating banquet hall. The moment I stepped out the door, the evening breeze blew on my face, and I realized I was already in tears. But that wasn't sadness, it was relief. "Selena, from today on, live for yourself." I took out my phone and dialed a long-dormant number. The call was quickly answered, and an elderly yet gentle voice came from the other end. "Girl, have you figured it out?" My tears finally burst forth, but my voice carried a smile. "Teacher, I've figured it out. I'll take that project of yours." The next morning at 9 o'clock, I appeared punctually at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Evan was half an hour late. When he arrived, his face was so gloomy it could drip water, with dark circles under his eyes, clearly having not slept all night. He probably thought this was another tactic of mine to force him to comply. After all, in the past 10 years, I had used breakup and leaving countless times to gain his negligible attention, each time ending with my compromise. "Selena, have you made enough of a fuss?" He slammed a document on the table in front of me. "This is the supplementary clause for the West City project, sign it, and come back with me." His tone carried an impatient air of charity. I didn't even lift my eyelids, pushing the divorce agreement I had already prepared in front of him. "My conditions are all there," my voice was flat. "I'll leave with nothing, I don't want anything. You just need to sign. Evan seemed to have heard the biggest joke. He sneered, lit a cigarette, and in the swirling smoke, his expression became even more contemptuous. Leave with nothing? Selena, how many days can you survive without me? Yes, everyone thought so. I was Evan's caged canary. Without him, I was nothing. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him, just quietly looking at him, as if looking at a stranger. This completely unfamiliar gaze, devoid of any trace of love, finally made Evan sense something was wrong. The mockery on his face slowly solidified, replaced by scrutiny and irritation. Are you serious? He stubbed out the cigarette, leaned forward, trying to find a trace of pretense on my face. I didn't answer, just pushed the divorce agreement forward again, then picked up the pen and signed Selena in the wife's position. My handwriting was crisp and decisive, without the slightest hesitation. Evan's pupils suddenly contracted. He stared fixedly at my face, as if trying to see through me. We confronted each other like this, the air seeming to solidify. People around us handling business came and went, whispering, but between us, it was eerily quiet. Finally, he conceded. He grabbed the pen fiercely, with such force that it almost tore the paper, and signed Evan in the husband's position with flamboyant strokes. Selena, don't regret it. He gritted his teeth, throwing the signed agreement at me as if it were something filthy. I picked up the agreement, carefully read it through, confirmed it was correct, then neatly folded it and put it in my bag. From beginning to end, I didn't look at him again. Thank you. After saying these two words, I stood up and left. Behind me came his voice suppressing anger. Where are you going? I didn't stop, just faintly replied, anywhere is fine, as long as it's without you. Stepping out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, the sunlight was brilliantly dazzling. I took a taxi back to my and Evan's home, the villa where I had lived for 7 years. My belongings were few, one suitcase packed them all. Most were professional books and drawings, the dreams I had sealed away for 10 years. Before leaving, I saw at the entrance the white gown that Celine had accidentally stained yesterday. The maid had already washed it clean, ironed it flat, and hung it there. I smiled, picked up scissors, and in front of the stunned maid, cut that expensive gown into shreds. Then, pulling my suitcase, I left this luxurious cage without looking back. The phone rang. It was Evan's assistant. Madam, oh no, Miss Selena, Evan asked me to ask you, he wants lotus seed soup tonight, with rock sugar or osmanthus sugar? Leaning back in the taxi, watching the street scene speeding backward outside the window, I softly said, tell him that from now on, his diet, health, even life or death, has nothing to do with me. After hanging up, I blocked all of Evan's contact methods. The world was unprecedentedly quiet. The taxi stopped at the entrance of an old alley. I pulled my suitcase and walked into a studio with a cicada whisper plaque. The studio was not large but quaint and elegant. An elderly man with white hair was trimming a bonsai pine in the courtyard. He saw me, put down the scissors, and showed a gentle smile. Girl, welcome home. My eyes warmed, I stepped forward and gave him a hug. Teacher, I'm back. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. In these 3 months, Evan's world turned upside down. Without Selena, he discovered his life was a complete mess. He couldn't find the shirt to wear the next day, didn't know which drawer the stomach medicine was in, and even forgot which foods he was allergic to. He attributed this to habit, a bad habit. Selena had taken care of him too well, turning him into an invalid in daily life. He thought, once her anger subsided, he would humble himself to pick her up, and everything would return to normal. But he waited a week, a month, 3 months. Selena seemed to have vanished from the earth, no calls, no texts, no inquiries through any friends. For the first time, he felt panic. Celine tried to fill Selena's vacancy. She imitated Selena by making soup, matching ties for him, clumsily pleasing him. But her soup was either too salty or too bland, and the ties she matched always clashed with his suit colors. Once, Evan's stomach ailment flared up, causing him to writhe in pain on the bed. Celine frantically rummaged through cabinets and only found a box of stomach medicine expired for half a year. At that moment, what flashed in Evan's mind was Selena always being able to immediately take out medicine and warm water from the third drawer of the bedside table, then gently massaging his stomach with her warm hands. Irritation, unprecedented irritation. He began frequently returning to that empty villa late at night, sitting on the bay window where Selena used to love to stay, smoking an entire night. He told himself he was just not used to it. Until a major incident occurred at the company. Their company had invested huge resources in a cultural tourism project they were determined to win, the Cloud Dream Lake theme park design scheme, which was completely rejected by the partners. The reason was that they had found a better scheme. A studio called Cicada Whisper emerged out of nowhere, stunning everyone, including Evan, with a scheme named Butterfly Transformation. That scheme perfectly fused classical garden aesthetics with modern architectural beauty, full of vitality and life force, as if one could see a soul breaking out of its cocoon and becoming a butterfly. Evan looked at the design drawings, his heart inexplicably pounding. This style felt somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen it. He mobilized all his connections to investigate this Cicada Whisper studio, but the information obtained was pitifully scarce. He only knew that the studio's principal was a very mysterious young woman who never appeared publicly. An absurd thought emerged from the bottom of Evan's heart, but he quickly suppressed it. Impossible. What did Selena know about design? She was just a housewife who didn't even finish university, only bustling in the kitchen. However, when he appeared at the victory cocktail party for the Cloud Dream Lake project with a trace of anticipation he wouldn't admit to himself, he was completely stunned. The protagonist of the cocktail party, the mysterious designer surrounded by everyone in the center, talking eloquently, who else but Selena? She wore a sharp black suit, her long hair tied up, revealing a graceful swan neck. Her face had delicate light makeup, her eyes confident and composed, sparkling with a light he had never seen. She was no longer the Selena who always followed behind him, with eyes full of humility and love. Standing there, she herself was the most dazzling scenery. People around were complimenting her. "Teacher Selena, your butterfly transformation scheme is truly a stroke of genius. Yes, we never expected the founder of Cicada Whisper Studio to be so young and beautiful. Teacher Selena." Evan felt his breathing stop. His gaze, as if attracted by a magnet, couldn't move away from her at all. And she, from beginning to end, didn't glance in his direction. As if he was just air, an insignificant background. Until the cocktail party ended, she shook hands and bid farewell to the partner's boss, turned to leave, and her gaze inadvertently met his. Their eyes locked. In his eyes were shock, disbelief, a tumult of complex emotions. In hers, only a calm without ripples, and the polite yet distant indifference when seeing a stranger. She even slightly nodded to him as a greeting. Then, turned around and left without any lingering. At that moment, Evan's heart felt like it was gripped tightly by an invisible hand, hurting so much he could hardly breathe. He finally understood that Selena had really left. She not only left his home but also his world, going to a completely unfamiliar, higher, and farther place. And he was left far behind. Evan chased out almost out of control. "Selena!" He stopped her in the parking lot. Selena's assistant, a capable-looking young man, immediately blocked her vigilantly. "Sir, may I ask what your business is?" "I'm looking for her." Evan's eyes stared fixedly at Selena, his voice hoarse. Selena waved her hand, signaling the assistant to step aside. She looked calmly at Evan, as if looking at a stranger approaching to chat. "Evan, is there something?" Her address was polite yet distant. Evan. This address pierced Evan's heart like a needle. He would rather she call him by full name as before, or even curse him, than this. When did you start doing design?" He opened his mouth with difficulty, feeling his tongue tying. "A long time ago." Selena's answer was concise. "Why didn't I know?" He pursued, his voice carrying a grievance he himself didn't notice. Selena seemed to have heard something amusing, curling her lips in a faint arc, but that smile was full of sarcasm. "Evan, there are many things you don't know. You don't know that I studied architectural design in university, don't know that my mentor is the national authority in landscape design, Master Warren, you even don't know that the initial design draft for your company's first award-winning Starlight project was drawn by me. You only know that you need a wife, a nanny, a tool person who handles all your worries so you can peacefully chat with your confidants outside. Her voice wasn't loud, but every word pierced the heart. Evan's face instantly turned pale. The Starlight project, that was the starting point of his career, his most proud masterpiece. He always thought it was his burst of inspiration, but it turned out that everything he was proud of was built on her sacrifices. He opened his mouth, but found he couldn't say a word. Pale excuses seemed utterly ridiculous in front of her calm. Evan, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Selena didn't want to say another word to him, turned to get in the car. Wait. Evan suddenly grabbed her wrist. Her wrist was cool and slender, as if it would break with a little force. His heart panicked, subconsciously loosening his grip a bit. Selena, can we talk? His voice carried an unnoticed plea, just consider it as me begging you. Selena's gaze fell on the wrist he grabbed, her brows slightly furrowed imperceptibly. It was an expression of disgust. Evan's heart ached again. Evan, Selena withdrew her hand, took out a wet wipe from her bag, and methodically wiped the place he had just touched. I think there's nothing left to talk about between us. As for you, she raised her eyes, her gaze icy, in what capacity are you begging me now? Ex-husband? Or a competitor whose project I snatched? Her words, like a sharp knife, stripped him of his last shred of dignity. He looked at her, this woman both familiar and strange, a strong wave of regret and panic overwhelming him. He wanted to grab her back, lock her by his side again, make her return to the Selena whose heart and eyes were full of him. But he knew he couldn't. Because he saw the light in her eyes. It was the light he had personally extinguished, and she had reignited herself. He had no right to touch it again. The car door closed, the black sedan sped away, leaving Evan with a nose full of exhaust. He stood there, watching the direction the car disappeared, unmoving for a long time. The phone rang, it was Celine. Brother Evan, where are you? I made soup, shall I bring it to you? Her coquettish voice came from the receiver. For the first time Evan found this voice so grating. No need. He coldly hung up, then dialed his assistant's number. Go investigate what Selena has been doing these 3 months, who she met, every detail, report all to me. He wanted to know what exactly he had missed. From Evan's perspective, Selena's 3 months were like a legend. The assistant's investigation report was detailed to who she met each day, where she went, even what she ate. On the first day after the divorce, she moved into the Cicada Whisper studio, which was the private courtyard of the National Studies master, old Mr. Warren. Warren, a towering figure in architectural design, had retired years ago but came out of retirement for her, serving as advisor to Cicada Whisper. She won the Cloud Dream Lake project not by luck. She spent a month traversing all the mountains and waters of the project site, consulting all related county annals and folk legends. Her design drafts were revised over a dozen times, every detail standing up to scrutiny. She was no longer the woman bustling around the stove. She wore simple outdoor clothes, a straw hat, sitting on field ridges with the most ordinary workers, eating and discussing schemes. Her face was smeared with dirt, but her smile was brighter than ever. She also met many people, all old friends of her father, now elites in various industries. Those figures Evan once saw as needing to curry favor treated Selena like a niece, kindly and affably. They taught her investments, introduced her to high-end circles, and protected her studio. Only then did Evan belatedly realize that Selena's connections were much deeper than he imagined. She wasn't incapable, she had just, for him, concealed all her sharpness, willingly being the inconspicuous shadow behind him. And he had taken all this for granted. The last page of the report was about Celine. The investigation showed that during the Cloud Dream Lake project bidding, Celine had multiple times attempted to bribe members of Selena's team to steal design drafts. Evan looked at those photos of Celine secretly transacting with people, feeling a wave of nausea. He had always thought Celine was pure and kind, fragile and unable to care for herself, needing his protection. Now it seemed he was the biggest fool. He mistook fish eyes for pearls, discarding the real pearl like worn-out shoes. Immense regret and anger gnawed at his heart like a beast. He rushed back to the villa. Celine was wearing the latest dress he bought, sitting on the sofa applying a face mask, directing the maid, acting like the lady of the house. "Brother Evan, you're back." She saw Evan and stood up in surprise. Evan ignored her, walked straight to her, and slammed the stack of photos on her face. "What is this?" His voice was as cold as ice. Celine saw the photos, her face instantly turning ashen. She panically explained, "Brother Evan, listen to me, I just wanted to help you. I was afraid that Selena would play some tricks." "Help me?" Evan laughed in anger. "Help me do such sneaky things? Help me lose face in front of the entire industry? I didn't. Brother Evan, believe me." Celine cried and tried to pull his hand. Evan disgustedly shook her off. "I was really blind before to think you were pure and kind. Compared to Selena, you can't even match one of her hairs." This sentence struck Celine like a thunderbolt. What she feared most was being compared to Selena. She had always thought she won, but now Evan personally told her she had lost utterly. "Get out." Evan pointed at the door, no warmth left in his eyes. "Take your things and get out of here immediately." Celine completely collapsed, slumping to the ground, wailing. Evan couldn't be bothered to look at her again, turned and rushed out of the villa, driving like mad towards the Cicada Whisper studio. He was going to find Selena. He wanted to tell her he was wrong. He wanted to tell her he saw Celine's true face. He wanted to tell her that the one he loved was her, always had been her. He floored the accelerator, the city's neon lights speeding past the window like streams of light. Now he had only one thought, to see Selena immediately, right now. However, when he rushed to the entrance of that quaint courtyard with a heart full of regret and desperate hope, he was stopped. Greeting him was Selena's young assistant. "Evan, teacher Selena is meeting guests and it's inconvenient to see you." The assistant's expression was formal, yet with an unquestionable firmness. "Meeting guests? What guests?" Evan asked irritably. "Business secrets, no comment." "Make her come out. I have very important words to say to her." "Sorry, Evan, teacher Selena has instructed that if it's you, she won't see you at all." "Won't see at all." These 4 words smashed Evan's heart like a heavy hammer. Unresigned, he tried to force his way in, but was held by the arms by 2 suddenly appearing security guards. "Mr. Evan, please calm down, or we can only call the police." Evan struggled, and through the gap in the courtyard door, he saw the figure that haunted his dreams. Selena was standing under the bonsai pine in the courtyard, side by side with a man, chatting happily. He recognized the man. It was Adrian, the heir to another giant company in their industry. A man who matched him in family background, ability, and appearance. Adrian was tilting his head saying something to Selena, with a gentle smile on his face. And Selena, looking up, her eyes flowing, smiling like a flower. That scene, a talented man and beautiful woman, peaceful times, stung Evan's eyes. He seemed drained of all strength, stopping his struggle. So, she wasn't meeting guests. She was on a date. Her life had already turned to a new chapter, and in that chapter, there wasn't even a punctuation mark belonging to him. Celine's scandal was eventually exposed. Someone, unknown who, packaged the evidence of her attempting to steal Cicada Whisper design drafts, along with her intimate relationship with Evan, and sent it to major media. In an instant, public opinion erupted. Evan's company stock plummeted, reputation ruined. And Celine became the scheming mistress and commercial spy everyone condemned, quickly fired by her original company, completely cutting off her future. Everyone thought this was Selena's counterattack. A thorough revenge against her ex-husband and his white moonlight. Only Evan knew that Selena did nothing. She was even too lazy to do it. The one who ignited all this was himself. It was he who sent people to investigate, he who slammed the evidence in Celine's face, he who drove Celine out of the villa. And all this was used by some interested party, embellished and made public. Perhaps some business rival who disliked him, or someone wanting to please Selena. But in any case, Selena from start to finish was like an outsider. She didn't even express any opinion on this matter. When reporters cornered her, asking her thoughts, she just smiled faintly. Other people's affairs have nothing to do with me. I only care about my next project. This complete indifference broke Evan's heart more than any vicious revenge. He became the laughingstock of the city. A fool who abandoned his loyal wife for a mistress, only to be bitten back by the mistress and left far behind by his ex-wife. The company's board complained about him, partners cancelled contracts one after another. Evan was overwhelmed, and in his distress, he thought of Selena again. If it were her, she would surely have a way to help him through the crisis. Like a madman, he went to block her at the Cicada Whisper studio entrance every day. Sending flowers, gifts, writing apology letters. All the things he previously disdained, he did them all now. But Selena never appeared once. Those expensive gifts were returned untouched. Those letters full of regret were thrown into the trash as waste paper. The only places he could see her were in financial news, in live streams of industry forums. She was becoming more dazzling, like a rising star. Her Cicada Whisper studio, in just a few months, had become a hot new favorite in the industry. While he was constantly falling. That night, he drank too much again. Stumbling, he came to the Cicada Whisper studio entrance, fueled by alcohol, madly pounding on the tightly closed wooden door. Selena! Come out! Come out to me! I know you hate me. You revenge on me. Are you satisfied now? Seeing me like this, are you happy? Come out and see me once, just once, okay? He cried like an abandoned child, tears and snot flowing, without any image. The door finally opened. Coming out was still the young assistant. The assistant looked at his disheveled appearance, eyes without sympathy, only coldness. Evan, teacher Selena has already rested. Make her come out. Evan roared. Teacher Selena said that in her life dictionary, there is no Evan anymore. Please don't come to disturb her again. After saying that, the assistant took out a business card from his pocket and handed it to him. Additionally, teacher Selena asked me to tell you. If you are really at a dead end, you can contact this person, he might acquire your company and leave you a decent pension. Evan looked down, the business card had a name he couldn't be more familiar with. Adrian. With a boom, the last string in his mind snapped. She wasn't revenging on him, she even disdained to revenge. She just completely treated him as a failed stranger who needed pity and charity. This realization was more painful than killing him. He raised his head, looking at the window on the second floor with warm light, suddenly laughed, a laugh uglier than crying. Good, good. Selena, you're really good. He staggered back, turned, and disappeared into the deep night. Selena's revenge had just begun. Or rather, it wasn't called revenge at all, it was a dimensional strike. Evan's company, due to the previous scandal and poor management, fell into a severe financial crisis. Banks pressed for loans, shareholders forced the palace, he was besieged on all sides. He set aside all pride and dignity, begging everyone he could, but got only closed doors. The business world is like a battlefield, when the wall falls, everyone pushes. No one helps a doomed failure. Just as he despaired, an unexpected olive branch was thrown to him. A prime land in the East City was to develop a large commercial complex. The project leader publicly tendered and specifically invited Evan's company to bid. This was a project that could bring him back from the dead. Evan, like grasping the last straw, locked himself in the office for 3 days and nights without sleep, leading the team to create what he thought was his most perfect scheme ever. He thought this was heaven giving him a chance. Until at the bidding site, he saw Selena sitting in the client's seat. She wore a white professional skirt suit, elegant, capable, the focus of the entire venue. Next to her sat Adrian with a gentle smile. It turned out that the leading party of this project was Adrian's company. And Selena was the specially appointed general consultant. Evan's heart sank to the bottom instantly. He understood. This wasn't an opportunity, it was a trap tailored for him, a judgment seat. But he had no retreat. He could only brace himself, go on stage, open the PPT, and start his pale and powerless explanation. His voice echoed in the spacious conference room, every word like whipping his own face. He explained his proud ideas, but his gaze uncontrollably glanced at Selena. She listened quietly, no expression on her face, neither appreciation nor disdain, as if listening to a report unrelated to her. Explanation finished, Evan stood on stage, palms full of cold sweat. The conference room was silent. Finally, Selena picked up the microphone. Evan's scheme has ideas. She spoke, her voice clear and cold, but, frankly, this scheme, from market positioning to design concept, is full of arrogance and assumption. She stood up, walked to the big screen, picked up the pointer, and began to dissect the flaws in his scheme one by one. First, your customer group positioning is vague. You want to capture both high-end consumers and young trend groups, but your design language is full of contradictions. The end result will only displease both sides. Second, your flow line design has serious problems. For a commercial complex, the most important is how to guide foot traffic, make customers willing to stay and spend. But your design will only make customers feel like entering a maze, with extremely poor experience. Third, and most importantly, your scheme has no soul. She turned around, her gaze directly on him, sharp like a scalpel. A good commercial design should resonate with this city and its people. But in your scheme, I only see cold steel and concrete, and a naked pursuit of profit maximization. Evan, how long has it been since you properly looked at the city under your feet? Evan was left speechless by her question, his face alternating red and white. His proud perfect scheme, under her analysis, was riddled with holes, utterly flawed. Only then did he horrifyingly discover that, unbeknownst when, his designs had lost their former vitality and warmth, leaving only cold calculations and business logic. And the person who once brought him countless inspirations and warmth was standing opposite, critiquing him to nothing. My comments are finished. Selena put down the microphone, sat back in her position, and didn't look at him again. Throughout, Adrian watched her with a smile, his eyes full of undisguised appreciation and indulgence. That day, Evan lost utterly. The winning bid was from another obscure small company. Later he learned that the company's founder was Selena's student. Selena used a textbook commercial bidding to tell him how great the gap between them was. She not only crushed him in career but also personally destroyed his most proud professional ability. This was more painful than killing him. After the bidding meeting, Evan's company was completely finished. Banks seized assets, shareholders took the last funds, employees scattered. Overnight, he went from the high and mighty Evan to a failure with nothing. He sold the villa, sold the sports car, moved into a rundown rental. He began frantically looking for work, but his reputation had spread in the circle, no company dared to hire him. He tasted all the warmth and coldness of human relations, the fickleness of the world. He finally understood what Selena had given up and endured for him back then. He began having insomnia night after night, his mind repeatedly replaying the 10 years with Selena. He remembered the first time she made soup for him, accidentally burning her hand, but smiling and saying it's really good to him. He remembered during his most difficult startup times, she secretly sold the only jewelry left by her mother to pay his office rent. He remembered every time he succeeded, she stood in the corner of the crowd, quietly applauding him, her eyes full of admiration and love. Those details ignored for 10 years now played in his mind like movie slow motion, frame by frame, each time like lingering death to his heart. He regretted. He really regretted. He wanted to find Selena, kneel before her, beg for forgiveness. But he didn't even know where she was now. Since that bidding meeting, Selena seemed to have evaporated again. Her studio was handed to the team to manage, and she herself disappeared. Some said she went on a world tour with Adrian. Some said she went abroad for further study. Evan, like a headless fly, inquired everywhere for her news, but found nothing. He became more and more decadent, relying on alcohol to numb himself every day. That day, drunk, he walked on the street and bumped into a passerby. "Don't you have eyes?" the other cursed viciously. Evan raised his head, alcohol blurred his vision, he seemed to see Celine's face. "It's you?" he murmured. The woman before him had long lost her initial glamour. She wore cheap clothes, heavy makeup, her eyes full of malice and unwillingness. "Evan?" Celine also recognized him, stunned at first, then bursting into sharp mockery. "Yo, isn't this the famous Evan? How did you end up looking like a ghost?" Evan ignored her, just wanting to bypass her. But Celine persistently blocked him. "What? Seeing me like this, are you smug? You think Selena is something good? She's much more ruthless than me. She's revenging on you. She wants you to have nothing, to taste being trampled underfoot." "Shut up!" Evan roared irritably. "I won't." Celine laughed even more crazily. "You know? The one who exposed our affair wasn't any business rival, it was someone Selena found. She planned everything long ago. She designed you step by step, lured you in, then watched you wag your tail like a dog before her. She never loved you. She was just using you, and when done, kicked you away. I told you to shut up." Evan suddenly pushed her. Celine fell to the ground but still laughed, laughing until tears came out. "Evan, you're really a pitiful worm. You still think she has feelings for you? I tell you, she's with Adrian now, very happy. They're about to get engaged. She forgot you long ago." Engaged, these two words pierced Evan's heart like a sharp sword. He staggered, running away like mad, Celine's laughter behind him like a vicious curse, lingering. Evan didn't know how he returned to that rundown rental. Celine's words swirled in his mind like demonic sounds. Engaged. Selena was going to engage with Adrian. He slumped on the cold floor, his heart feeling like a piece was dug out, cold wind whistling in. He didn't believe. He wouldn't believe. He took out his phone, fingers trembling, flipped to Adrian's social account. He hadn't looked at these for a long time, because each time was like self-torture. Adrian's latest post was 3 days ago. The photo showed the azure Aegean Sea, and sky as one. Adrian embraced a woman from behind, the woman in a white long dress, sea wind lifting her long hair, though only a back view. Evan recognized it as Selena at a glance. The caption was, "My queen." Below, a row of comments, all blessings. "Congrats Adrian on winning the beauty. When's the wedding? Talented man and beautiful woman, match made in heaven." Evan's fingers pressed hard on the screen, almost crushing the phone. Selena in the photo looked so relaxed, so happy. She nestled in another man's arms, at the other end of the world, enjoying the romance and gentleness he never gave her. And he, like garbage, abandoned in this dark corner, rotting, stinking. An unprecedented jealousy and madness overwhelmed him. Why? Why could she be so happy? Why could she so easily forget the past and start a new life? Then what about their 10 years? What about the youth and emotions he paid for her? No, he couldn't accept. He couldn't accept her belonging to someone else. A crazy idea formed in his mind. He was going to find her. He was going to Greece, to the Aegean Sea, to ask her face to face, what were those 10 years? He wanted to tell her he was wrong, he regretted, he couldn't live without her. Even if she didn't forgive him, he would destroy her happiness. What he couldn't get, no one else could. As if injected with the last bit of strength, he leaped from the ground, began frantically rummaging through boxes, searching for his long-expired passport and the remaining cash. He booked the fastest cheap flight to Athens. At the moment the plane took off, looking at the city getting smaller outside the window, he had only one thought, "Selena, wait for me. If I die, I'll take you with me." After over 10 hours of flight, the plane finally landed in Athens. Evan, ignoring jet lag, took that photo, like a madman, searching house by house on the various small islands of Santorini. He didn't understand Greek, his English was stuttering, could only hold the photo, asking in Chinese over and over, "Have you seen her? Seen this woman?" Everyone looked at him like a lunatic. 2 days later, his money was spent, he was haggard beyond recognition, beard stubbly, eyes sunken, like a vagrant. He slept on the seaside bench, the sea wind cold and hard, blowing pain into his bones. He was almost in despair. Just then, he saw a familiar black sedan stop at the entrance of a nearby cliff hotel. The person getting out was Adrian. Adrian opened the door for the woman in the back seat. That woman was the Selena he had been thinking of, searching for 2 days. Selena wore casual clothes, a serene smile on her face. She said something to Adrian, then the two walked hand in hand into the hotel. Evan's eyes instantly reddened. Without thinking, he rushed over. "Selena!" he roared, rushing in front of them, grabbing Selena's wrist tightly. Selena and Adrian were stunned. Selena looked at the gaunt, demonic-looking man before her. It took several seconds to recognize he was Evan. Her brow subconsciously furrowed, her eyes full of undisguised shock and disgust. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was colder than Santorini's sea wind. "What am I doing here?" Evan looked at her, laughing uglier than crying. "I came to ask you, Selena, is your heart made of stone? Our 10 years of feelings, you say no and it's no? You ruined me to nothing, family broken, now you peacefully enjoy with another man here? Why?" His questioning was hoarse and exhausted. Adrian's face darkened, stepped forward, protected Selena behind him, coldly looking at Evan. "Mr. Evan, please show some respect." "Respect?" Evan seemed to hear the biggest joke. "You, a man who stole someone's wife, talk to me about respect?" He bypassed Adrian, staring fixedly at Selena. "Selena, tell me clearly. Did you ever love me? Were those 10 years all fake? Were you calculating me from the beginning?" Selena finally spoke, her expression calm to the point of cruelty. "Evan, I did love." She looked at him, word by word. "Before the day I decided to divorce, I used all my life to love you. I thought you were my whole world, I was willing to give everything for you. But," she turned sharply, her eyes becoming cold, "you personally ground my love away bit by bit. It was you who told me how cheap my efforts were, how humble my love was. As for calculating you? Evan, you overestimate yourself. To deal with you, I don't even need to do it myself. You reached this point today due to your own arrogance and stupidity, nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me." Again these 4 words. Evan completely collapsed, grabbed Selena's shoulders, shaking her madly. "No. I don't believe. You just hate me. You just want revenge. You just can't stand seeing me well. Let her go." Adrian swung a punch, knocking Evan to the ground. Evan crawled up, like an enraged beast, about to pounce again. Just then, a white-haired elderly man walked out of the hotel. It was Warren, Selena's teacher. Mr. Warren looked at the farce before him, sighed, and said to Evan, "Young man, stop. You and Selena are no longer in the same world. You only see her current glamour, but don't know how much she paid to reach today. While you were romancing other women, she was staying up nights in the studio drawing, until stomach bleeding. When you thought she relied on others' connections, for one scheme, she stayed in deep mountains for half a month, bitten all over by poisonous insects. You think she won easily, but every step she took was on glass shards. She just never cried pain." Warren's words, like a basin of ice water, poured over Evan's head, sobering him instantly. He stared blankly at Selena. He never knew she went through these. What he thought was her ease had such shocking costs behind. Selena straightened her wrinkled clothes, said to Adrian and Warren, "Teacher, Adrian, let's go in, don't let such a person affect our mood." She was even too lazy to look at him again, turned to leave. "Wait." Evan crawled up from the ground, hoarsely calling her. Looking at her back, he asked the last question. Are you really going to engage with him?" Selena's steps paused. She didn't turn back, just faintly said, "Mr. Evan, I think you misunderstood. Adrian and I came to Greece not for engagement." A faint hope rose in Evan's heart. However, Selena's next words plunged him into eternal damnation. "We came to get married." After saying that, she linked arms with Adrian and walked into the hotel without looking back. Golden sunlight sprinkled on her pure white skirt hem, so dazzling, so glaring. Evan stood there, watching the slowly closing door, as if separating two worlds. He finally understood that he had completely, forever, lost her. He lost utterly, lost his entire life. The sea wind blew, stirring up ground dust, blurring his eyes. He seemed to see, many years ago, that girl in a white dress, standing under the university's camphor tree, on tiptoe, shyly yet bravely saying to him, "Evan, I like you." He laughed. Laughing and laughing, tears flowed down,